And now for more insights on this topic, we are being joined by our correspondent Jagriti Dave live from Washington, D.C. Hi Jagriti, thank you so much for joining us. So it seems that tensions continue to escalate between the US and China, and Mike Pompeo blames China now for brewing the virus in some Chinese lab. We already know that China had shared a video recently mocking the US for its response in dealing with the pandemic. So how do we see this relationship between the US and China panning out?
It seems that this war of words is likely to continue. The president is clearly, as reports are saying, shifting the blame onto China, as critics are saying, to divert the attention from his and his administration's own handling of the pandemic in the United States. And so this war of words, this blame game, this back and forth that we're seeing now, it's a pattern. We've seen it before in the trade dynamics of the trade relationship between the US and China. And so this is really likely this verbal back and forth that we see for the public. Now, there's a difference between what's being said and what's being done behind the scenes. And that, again, if we look at the example that we have is indeed the pattern of the trade relationship, that behind the scenes things were happening that were very different to what was being said. You know, sometimes there was good things being said between the two sides, each complimenting each other, talking about their friendship, but there was no motion on the trade front. Similarly, there's an escalation of the war of words, but with the expectation that things will escalate. And that at times hasn't really happened. At times there has been movement where there was the escalation of tariffs upon tariffs. So here really the reporting is showing that the Trump administration's strategy is really to blame China for the pandemic, diverting attention, as critics will say, from his handling of the pandemic.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit about the situation in the United States as of now. We are hearing of bodies mounting up in New York City when there is no space in morgues, and the case count has now crossed 1 million. And people are protesting against stay-at-home orders and asking to open up the economy. But is this really the right time for the U.S. to open up the economy?
It's this balance that states are having to navigate across the whole country. Today, President Trump gave a town hall, did a virtual town hall with Fox News in the Lincoln Memorial, this highly symbolic location where he sat by the statue of one of the most iconic, arguably one of the most iconic US presidents. And the aim of this whole event was to talk about the reopening of America, getting Americans back to work. And this is coming at a time where several states are expressing concerns about being able to get Americans back to work when there is not adequate testing available. To show that the demand for testing, Los Angeles has been offering tests to anyone who wants it, with priority given to health workers and those with symptoms. But anyone theoretically can get a coronavirus test. And their website, where they're asking people to sign up and book and make appointments, has been inundated. So there is clearly a demand for testing, but states showing that there are concerns that there's not enough going around. And so these are some of the concerns that businesses, that state governors are having as they look to those stay-at-home orders loosening and the people going back to work amidst, as you say, protests in several states against those stay-at-home orders, which those people on those protests are viewing as restrictive to their personal liberties, but also at the same time expressing concerns about their livelihoods and the fact that we are seeing around over 30 million Americans across the country filing for unemployment.
Right. Now, we also know that this is the election year in the United States, and the rivalry between Joe Biden and President Trump is now centering on the China rhetoric, really. So will this be the narrative of the 2020 elections in the U.S.?
It will be one of the narratives. It most certainly seems so. Joe Biden has been referencing it in a campaign video. Of course, we've seen it front and centre of the president's bid for re-election. It is one of the narratives. There will be several other narratives about the economy, about the state. President Trump's claims that he inherited a bad system, he inherited a broken system, which, of course, Joe Biden, as the vice president under the former administration, was a part of. of. But of course, Joe Biden will also be honing in on those criticisms of President Trump and his handling of the pandemic, people saying that he underplayed the severity of the crisis earlier on, choosing to focus on the economy, acting too late, disregarding reports that said that the pandemic was, that the coronavirus was a serious issue. He addressed those in that town hall, confirming reports that as early as January the 23rd, intelligence officials were talking to him about the pandemic, but he said that they were presented as not that big a deal, and that the conversation was brief. And then he went back to touting his own travel restrictions on China and Europe and Great Britain to show his swift and speedy response. But really, the coronavirus is likely to be front and centre of both re-election campaigns.
Right, Jagriti, thank you so much for your inputs and for joining us this morning.